Hi, I'm Jacqueline Aguilar, and the book that I've selected is titled Transforming Educational Pathways for Chicana Students, a Critical Race Feminista Praxis, and is written by Dolores Delgado Bernal and Enrique Alemán Jr. This book is divided into 6 chapters, and I've inserted the titles of the chapters into this slide. The first one is titled The Origin and Context of Adelante. The second is called The Trenza in Our Partnership Work. The third chapter is called Los Las Primeros Primeras. 4 is Parents, Teachers, and Transformative Ruptures. 5 is Politicizing Diversity Scholars in a White University. And 6 is Consejos for Critical Race Feminista Praxis. I really enjoyed reading this book, and the book begins by giving us a bit of context behind Adelante, which is the research that this book is written about. And the researchers for Adelante are our 2 authors, Dolores Delgado Bernal and Enrique Alemán Jr. And just to give a bit of background, Dolores Delgado Bernal is a Chicana Latina who began her work in education in Kansas City, Missouri in 1986 with the Guadalupe Center as a director of a bilingual school. She also then became a specialist, an educational specialist for the National Council of La Raza, and she was a bilingual teacher in Pasadena Unified School District in California, and then she became a teacher educator in UCLA. Enrique Aleman Jr. Has a bit of a different background. He was engaged with policy, working with the state and the local level. He was a full time staffer for the Central Intelligence Agency and worked on issues more aligned with his values like school finance, equity, educational leadership for empowerment, and community transformation in predominantly Chicano and Chicana communities in South Texas. So, what exactly is adelante? Adelante means forward or forward moving. It's the simple yet radical belief that all young people, including young people of color, should be expected and prepared to enroll and succeed in college, and that college preparation must emphasize students' intellectual development in relation to their racial and cultural identities and their community. This is what our author studied in this book. So Adelante's main objectives were to prepare students and their families for college by integrating higher education into their school experience and help establish a college going culture within the school. The study took place at Jackson Elementary, which was a West Side school in a working class community of color. It was undersourced, with fewer educational opportunities and with lower teacher expectations. This was a longitudinal study guided by 5 main themes. Number 1, the college going culture of Jackson Elementary. 2, the change in awareness of higher education among students and parents. 3, the extent to which the university school community partnership affects student achievement. 4, the manner by which mentoring relationships influence student experiences. And 5, the ways in which the cultural component of the partnership impacts students, parents, and teachers. And so the authors use a lot of Spanish words to convey different meanings about their work. The first one they use is the trenza in their partnership. And the trenza it means braid. And they talk about the braiding between the different theories that they used across their research. The first one that they discuss is the critical race theories. And critical race theories are theoretical, conceptual, methodological, and pedagogical strategies that account for the role of race and racism in the US educational system and frameworks that work toward the elimination of racism as part of a larger goal of eliminating all forms of subordination. They also refer to the Chicana feminist theories, and this is a theoretical framework that embodies the goals of advocacy scholarship, which both challenges the claims of objectivity and links research to community concerns and social change. And so this is where the researchers refer to the trenza or the braid because they braid together two theories and they call it the critical race feminista praxis, which is the coming together or the braiding and the weaving of critical race and Chicana feminist theories and the strategies and approaches that they applied in their practice. So their third chapter talks about their original students that they began this partnership with. Uh, Now there has been 10 cohorts of kindergarten students who have participated in Adelante. From those 10 cohorts, there's 37 students that they still maintain relationships with throughout the years. Um, as I read this chapter, they talked about their experiences with the kindergartners and how they began taking them to the university and the different things that they heard both from parents, from teachers, from students, and even from the professors in the university. And so one of the quotes that really stood out to me was one that was made by one of the teachers that was part of this program. And this teacher said, "Look how special they think you are because they are all here to greet you." And this just shows the partnership between the teacher and the professors at the university because when the students arrived at the university, there was always professors that were there welcoming them to the university. Students participated in various components. They participated with college mentors, they had oral history projects, and they had field trips. So the book then continues talking about the parents, teachers, and the transformative ruptures that occurred throughout this research. And they begin by talking about choques. Choques means collisions. And they talked about the collisions within the schools, among teachers, and across the community that manifested themselves as frustration and anger when they began Adelante. And so when they began Adelante, they started to cultivate confianza or trust through the different partnerships that they established with the university. Later on, parents started to consistently commit their time and their energy to Adelante, and the partnership made efforts to dedicate resources so that parents and family members could attend events. And so they worked against a deficit thinking that occurred constantly in the schools. And within the school, there was a huge deficit thinking about the parents of students of color and how their involvement or their low involvement in events in the school did not help the students. And so the work of Adelante was to really build the trust or build the confianza between the parents and the staff members of the elementary school in order to really push for students to be able to be exposed to the university. And so the book continues with the chapter titled Politicizing Diversity Scholars in a White University. And one of the highlights of this research was the partnerships that Adelante was able to secure with approximately 20 mentors from the University of Utah's chapter of MECA, which is the Movimiento Estudiantil Chicano de Aztlán, or the student movement of Chicanos from Aztlán. And MECA's commitment to serve the communities of color and the inclination of the graduate students to work with younger students of color lent itself to this collaboration. So the mentors from the university were students who came from similar backgrounds as the students that attended Jackson Elementary. And this allowed for the students in Jackson Elementary to really look up to these students that were attending the university And a lot of them, now that they were in high school, they kept mentioning the mentors that they once had when they were in elementary school and how they looked forward to when they attend the university just like they did. The authors end the book by giving some consejos or advice for critical race feminista praxis. And as you recall, this was the braiding between the two theoretical frameworks of critical race theories and feminista praxis theories. And they were organized around three interconnected and overlapping concepts. The first one was Nepantla. Nepantla is the site of transformation, the place where different perspectives come into conflict and where you struggle to find equilibrium. And one thing they mention is that Nepantla is like your home. It's where you figure out the balance between your values and what you can do and what is out there for you. The authors continue talking about the concept of tranzas or transactions. And when I read this concept, I was a bit confused because tranzas could also mean fraudulent transactions. And I don't think the authors really meant for it to be fraudulent transactions, but just transactions in their own. So if I could change one thing about the book, I would change this concept from tranzas to transacciones, which literally means transactions. And when they talk about transactions, they talk about the growing and the funding of the partnership between the elementary and the university. They also talk about the framing community partnership and the work that was engaged with the scholarships. And they also talk about the building relationships with allies and others. And so they really talk about relationships in this concept and how this has really impacted the work of Adelante. The other concept that they refer to is the transformative ruptures, and this refers to the disruptions to educational structures, transformative ruptures to colonial methodologies, and then the disruptions to everyday reality. And they talk about the different disruptions that happened throughout the study and how this also impacted their thoughts as they completed the study. And so I wanted to end by sharing a quote that I read in the book that really stood out to me. And it says, though starting small, growing strategically, and framing our work were essential functions to the partnership's development and its sustainability, forging relationships was perhaps the most important function of our work. As I read this book, I was able to really connect to the work that Delgado and Aleman completed. I also come from a Chicano Latina background, and as I read the book, I was able to really connect to the concepts and the experiences that they shared. And I thought that this research project that they completed was something very impactful and yet something so simple that happened in an elementary school with a large population of students of color, and how just exposing them to the university world constantly made a big difference in their lives. I would totally recommend this read if you're interested in the education of Chicano or Latino students and how we can better support our English learners and our students who come from backgrounds with more deficits and how we can better support their education and their future endeavors. Thank you for listening, and I hope that you enjoyed this presentation.